And let's talk about one other minor detail here. This thing that new calls to initialize a student object is called a constructor, because it makes things, or it's used only when the thing is being constructed. So you can't call that student function yourself. New is the only one that's allowed to call it, and it's only used when you first make something. And we started out with an empty one, and we said if you don't write one, then you get all of the fields initialized to whatever you want, and we wrote, or to empty, and we wrote this one with the 3 arguments on it, so that people specifically always had to enter a first name, last name, and age. You can have multiple versions of that constructor. It's normal to write one that says, here's all of the information that needs to be supplied as a convenience, and it's quite often that somebody also comes along and writes one that says, what's the minimal information that's necessary? Okay, so you can think of that as the spot on the forms where they say you just have to fill in these red things and everything else will fill in for you, or leave blank, right? So here's the maximum versus the minimum amount of information. To write one of those, you go back into the student class and you just add yet another one that looks different. And as a matter of fact, they're enough the same that I'm just going to steal this one, since my typing is particularly horrid, and put it in here, and I'm going to shorten it by saying, oh, okay, we don't always need to have the age. And if somebody doesn't supply the age, then we'll set the age to 0. Okay? And so that just allows you, if you want, to go back into the driver and say, well, it's also possible if you want to make a student, I'll just take Barney Rubble here, and leave off his age, in which case it'll be 0. Okay? And that gets used a fair bit.
I have a question. Do you have to put a number, or could you put as age none?
You have to put a number in there. If the field is required and it says number, then you have to put a number in there. In this case, you don't get a choice. You get it initialized to 0. Okay? So it almost exactly corresponds to see what you see on a web form. This is the short version is the one that just says fill in the highlighted red fields, and the long version is the one where somebody comes along and types in all of the information. And you could have, you know, if you've got 6 arguments, you could have any 3 filled in, you know, so there may be times when you have more than 2 versions of this thing if there's occasions where it makes sense as a convenience to just be able to fill it in this way. Okay, so there's lots of shortcuts that are available. The only thing that you have to do is that they have to differ somehow in either the number of arguments or the order of the pieces. So for instance, you can have string, integer for first name, last name, age, but you can't have string, integer for weight, because it can't tell the difference between them. But you can have weight, first name, last name, because that's a different order of things, integer, string, and so that combination would work. So somehow they have to be different. Okay, so that's just what's known as multiple constructors. Okay, so don't be freaked out when you see more than one of them, just variations. Okay, so that's everything about the student class. Last call for questions on student. Okay, let's move on and do another one. Same thing all over again. Where do we start? When you want to,
File new.
so file new, we'll make a brand new Java project. This thing we're going to, since the Christmas season just ended, we're going to talk about donations to charities. So click finish, and that just makes an empty folder, essentially, with all the goodies in it. So now we have to make a new class that's the kind of thing that we want to make. The rule here when we start these things out is we're always just making one of something. So last time we were just talking about one student. So we haven't gotten to the point of worrying about multiple students yet or how we store bunches of them. We're just concerned in the first class we make of how do we make just one thing. Okay, so let's imagine one thing. We've got one of those Salvation Army kettles on the street corner. Whether it be Salvation Army or SPCA or any of those other variations, it's always essentially the same kind of box, right? So let's just make something that's a donation box. So there's our class for donation box. So that's the thing. Now the question is, what sort of information or stuff are you keeping about the box? It's the first thing that comes to mind if you see one of those boxes.
How much money is in it?
How much money is in it? Sure. You can tell who wants to steal it. So that's private for variables. We'll just use pennies because it's more convenient than using something with a decimal point, and you need a name for what's going to hold it. Total. In this case, the key word you said was money, right? So I'm just going to combine them, and I'm going to say that it's the money total. Okay, so I'm trying for a name. The problem I don't like total is because total makes me ask, it's too generic, it makes me ask the question, total of what? Okay, and the problem I have with money is that that doesn't tell me that it's a total, it just could refer to a single donation. Okay, so you work really hard at trying to find a name that's decent, and so I took both ideas and said, well, it's really the money total. Okay, so not much doubt. By the way, we'll also find a way where if we think of a better name, we can go and change that really easily. Okay, what else have you got for the box?
How much is donated?
That's what,
I thought total would be just how much is in the entire thing, not like each individual.
we don't want to keep track of each individual donation yet, because that would be a list of all the donations, right? So we're just doing one number so far as all we can represent.
Where the box is, the location?
Not yet. What's more important than location? If you walk up to it, what's the first question that comes to mind?
The cause you're donating.
The cause that you're donating to. Okay, so we'll add in cause, which is going to be a string. What do you want to call it? The variable. Cause is not bad. More descriptive phrase.
Charity.
How about, sure, charity name. I always think of these, sometimes it's more, you think of names that you would use with kids. They're more likely to recognize, oh, what's the charity name, than they are to recognize what's the cause for the thing. That's just a little bit abstract. Okay? Now, there's no magic to how much stuff you could put in here. Location, we could do GPS coordinates for the thing if we wanted, if we could find some way of referencing that. But let's just start there. Okay? Another trick to the game is that you can always start with something small and add to it later. You don't have to go and make the entire thing at once and get all of the information in there. Okay? So there's a donation box and a charity name. Okay? Now, right away, this thing starts to get a little abstract. And so the best thing that you can do for yourself at this point is say, well, rather than worrying about this generic thing, let me go see if I can make one and use one and find out what sorts of things I can do with it. Okay? So what should we make in order to do that? This is just a sample of what one might be if we were to make one. So what did we do last time after we made the student class? Go back and look at student class in the source folder. Make some sort of driver program. So the driver is always the active thing. The driver is the thing that says, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to make a bunch of these student forms. So that quite often is the thing that's going to help set your mind on what you're trying to do with this thing. So we'll go back here and we'll say File, New. You can call it anything you want. I'm going to call this one Donation Driver, just to start to be a little bit more specific. So here's a donation driver. What's the trick on this dialog box? Make sure you get a main to say this is the thing that is where everything starts. And come in here, and what would you do there to make one? To make a box. Somebody said, oh, we got to do donations. What did we do in this driver when we wanted to make one? This is the joy of having lots of source code. What's the important thing that we did here? Very first line says, I need to make a new one. So we'll go back into the driver and we'll say, I need to make a new, what kind of thing? So this is called a donation box. Now, there's the default. Would you ever make one like that? What would be the thing that you would do if you were actually putting one of these things together? It would have a name. Okay, at the very least. So this would be something like SPCA. What about the amount of money? How much money would it start out with? Okay. Would it ever start out with anything other than 0?
Probably not.
Probably not. It's not like we're going to, well, I guess somebody might want to pre-populate it with a few big bills just so that somebody gets the right idea. But in general, you can add those later. So when you make one of these boxes, it always has a name, and it always starts out with 0. So somebody must supply the name that you're going to put on the front, because you're not going to have anonymous donation boxes, but you're never going to give an amount of money when you make it. Okay? So notice that constructor is used for the sense of what's it going to look like when we first make one. Okay. We need to put this into a variable, so we'll call this, I don't know, the Bay Center donation box. So I'll use the variable name to refer to where it is. And what kind of variable is that? What's it going to hold? It's only going to refer to donation boxes. So when you make the variable, you have to be specific and say, this variable can only refer to donation boxes. So those things have to match on either side. Why is the red line there?
Because you're not accepting any parameters?
The default, we haven't made anything in this class. So now we need to make one of those public donation box. What type of information is coming in? It's a string with the name, and I'm going to use the same variable with the word in on it. What happens when that piece of paper comes in with the name you want on the box? it gets put into the variable up top. So these are two different variables. So we're going to take the variable that's in charity name. Oh, by the way, while we're at it, if you hold down the space bar, or I think it's control space, there we go, it gives the names of all of the variables that you can use at the moment. So if you're a lousy typist like me, you type the control space bar, it pops up with a list of the valid variables. You say, oh, I'm going to take in charity name, and where do you want to put it into? Charity name, control space, there's charity name. Okay? So there's another reason why long variable names are just fine. The IDE will help you pick the names that you can use at the moment. Okay. So there's that variable that's going to get initialized. What about money total? It defaults to 0. It's never a bad idea to ignore the defaults and just do, I think that money total, doing the same error over and over again. Different keyboard. I think that money total should always have a value of 0. Okay? There's two reasons for being explicit about that. The first one is that it's just consistent. I've got two variables there. Each one of them has a value. They're initialized in the same order. That's really handy when somebody puts 50 variables up top. Then you can see that they're all initialized in the same order instead of being all mixed up and some initialized and some not. The second reason for doing it this way is that there are programming languages, C for instance, where variables are only sometimes initialized to 0 by default and not always. And so it's just a nice consistent habit to say I'm always going to give it a value, then people know, there's no doubt. Okay? So now if you save that and you go back and you look at a donation driver, it's happy. Okay? The yellow line is saying, you haven't used that variable yet, why did you bother making it? So, okay, we've got our donation box, it's all set to go. What's going to happen with this donation box next? What are people going to do with it?
Put money in it.
They're going to put money in it. Okay? So this is another case of what variable do we have? Base enter. What do we want to say to it? What's a good action word to say? Donate, put money into. So let's just do it this way. Let's use the long form, put money into, and what are you going to supply there?
Donation box.
Some amount of cash. Okay? Which is, for our purposes, going to be some number of pennies. Okay? So notice that we haven't written put money into yet, so that's why it's complaining. So we'll go back into donation box and say, oh, okay, there's now something that we should be able to do with you other than just make one. We should be able to put money into. We'll supply some money coming in. And what are you going to do with the money? Add to the money that's already there. So we'll take money total and we'll add to, so that's plus equals the money coming in. Okay, so notice I didn't use in money on there. You could have. Okay, why is it complaining? Need to put something over there. Public, still complaining.
Public in,
What kind of thing does it give back if you put money into the box?
an integer.
Doesn't tell you what the total is, doesn't say anything. It's a void. So this is still this sense that things that set values or change values, give something in to make it different, and don't send anything back. Versus if you're asking a question, you tend to send nothing in and wait for something to come back. Okay? So put money in just adds to the total. Got it. Notice that variables are almost always marked as private. You can't touch these, I own these, and the action things, the words or the verbs are always marked as public. Here's something that I'm going to let you do. Here's the way that you can speak to me. Okay, so now we've got money in the box. Now what? What's another question that somebody might ask?
Is it full?
How much money is in the box? Right? And that's particularly useful to us because we just put money in. We want to make sure that somebody is actually putting that it's actually being contributed to the charity and not being pocketed. So I guess we should check and see whether or not the money actually went into the box. So we can talk to the Bay Center box again, and we can say what? Want to use the get word. What? Get total. So all that you can really tell is what the money total was. Okay? So if we're going to be consistent here, we should call this thing get money total. Just take anything in there, because it's asking a question. If you ask a question, you get an answer back, and we need a variable to hold on to the answer. Sort of arbitrary about what the variable is, and the kind of thing it is an integer. Okay, so that means we have to go back in here and write public get int get money total. And what should it do? Send back money total. And in the driver, there's two ways that we could check to see whether or not it worked. If we're doing it old school, I guess we would print out just total. Something like that. If you run it, what number do you expect to see printed out? 100. So we'll save all of this stuff and we'll run it. Total is 100. I guess that works. What do you expect if you donate some more money? So let's just toy with this thing again. If I add some more money, what do you expect that number to be? What's it going to print out? 100, and then the next line will say it should be 200 now. Well, let's just scroll down. Oh yeah, there's a bug here, by the way. Sometimes it doesn't print out the last line. So I'm just going to print an empty line, just out of interest's sake. See if that makes it do the right thing.
Nope. Because you haven't re-specified what total actually is. It says basically don't get money total, but you haven't done that again. So you haven't reassigned the new value to total.
So the bug is actually in the driver because
bug is that?
we put money into, we didn't redo this thing to ask the box again how much money is in there.
Yep.
So since we've already got that variable, we'll go down here and we'll refresh that variable with a new value. So we're reusing the variable, so I didn't have to say int on the front again, and we'll run it again. And scroll back a little bit, and there's the correct answer. Okay? By the way, notice that when you start doing this, you can have a bug in the driver that gives you the wrong answer, or you can have a bug in the donation driver that somehow leads to the wrong answer. Okay? Tough to tell which. But let's just go back here for a second. Suppose we left this line out. Watch what happens with the debugger. Actually, I'll just run the debugger all the way through so that we can have a look at things. Okay, so I put a breakpoint in. I'm going to hit the bug to run with the debugger. It's going to show me the value of variables. I'll do a step over. There's our Bay Center donation box created. It's got the right name and the right money total. Do a step over. Put money in. There's the 100 coming in. Do another step over. Print out the total. Total comes out as 100. Do another step over. What do you expect to happen? It went up. So notice the advantage of the debugger is that it tells you right away, oh, I know the code in the donation box is correct because it's actually totaling up things appropriately. So that now if you do a step over and you say, oh, 100, now it's immediately obvious that it must be the main program because we go back and look at the variable that's in the total there. It's 100, but the money total is correct. So the debugger will help find that bug a lot easier than playing Mr. Computer in your head and trying to go through the code and figure out what's wrong. Okay? So there's the debugger in action. I'm just going to go put that value back in there so that we do the right thing. And notice I tend to group these things together for the same purpose. So this thing I'm putting money in and then I'm going to check that total right away. So I put those two lines together. Got it. Okay. What else can we do with this thing?
Why are you even using a separate total and money total? Don't you just care how much ends up in the box at the end of it? In which case, shouldn't you just go look at the thing and then look at its subvariable, look at the variable at the time?
We can't look at the value of that variable directly because it's specifically marked as private. So the only way that you can get to it is to re-ask, to put some money in and then to ask again.
Could you add the update function or call it at the end of the put money into function? Because if you put money in, you should update the total no matter what each time.
That's what put money does.
Can you not call it from inside the other function to avoid doing it in the driver?
I'm not sure what you mean, but typically you don't want to. So the goal here is to do the steps separately and not combine steps, just as a general rule. Okay, so I mean what he's saying, well, put money into could just return a value, which would tell you right away what the total was. But now you've got something that's both asking a question and giving an answer. And to start with, we're going to separate out those ideas.
I'm saying you just simply ask that base get money total, and then anytime instead of having a separate variable you call total, anytime you want to find out, you simply ask base get money total.
And have it print?
Have it put it into whatever well, actually, I think what I'm really wondering is why you're bothering to put money into and then into total equals pay header dot get money total, and then put money into again, and then ask again in the same function.
Because it's a different person. It's conceivably, remember, these things differ in time, right? So it's not like it's somebody coming along and putting 200 pennies in. It's like there's literally one person comes along and puts some money in, somebody else comes along and puts some money in. They may or may not ask how much, what the total is in there, depending on whether or not they're interested. And so we're providing both the ability to update the thing and to ask a question, just so that people have that ability, that variation in things.
And if you have, you put money into, if you have then one total equals base center get money total, would that update the three that you put before? Let's say you put get money total, sorry, put money into 3 times without putting get money total. The next one, like,
If you want to try something, we can just say, put money into a bunch more times.
exactly. And then if you put now total, would total the 3 of them, or?
What do you expect the number to be?
I was
You have,
supposed to be
you have it,
500.
yeah, I can ask, actually ask.
I don't know if it would work that way.
How much money should be in the box? How many times do they put money into the box?
1, 2, 3, 5.
5? So how much money would you expect to see in the box?
500.
Just scroll back up a little so you can see it. Total is 500. There's only one variable inside the box. There's only one thing that's storing money.
Could you just call it, like, you know, the total is for total? Instead of just putting total, couldn't you just put base center dot get money total?
Yep. Your other alternative to stop using total is, instead of putting it into this variable, you could just put it right here. And get rid of that. That works. Why do you think I did it the other way?
So I
Can you give us
guess,
an example or what you either one?
Which way is better?
That way. It's easier to follow.
Okay, so, for one thing, code is generally easier to follow if it's just one little tiny step down the page at a time, rather than a whole bunch of stuff across the page. Okay, so if you can, this is a communication skill. If you can keep your reader reading down the page with short little things going yep, 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 that's a lot easier to figure out than something that's got this whole complicated thing across the page. Okay, and this is another one where programmers used to write big, long, complicated things across the page because it actually compiled into better code and was probably faster on the computer. But in the modern world, being able to go down the page and communicate something more effectively is typically better. What about as a debugging skill?
Yeah, you want to go line by line and have less to work.
If you go line by line, you get a variable with the debugger that shows you the value. If I do it the other way around and have a big, long, complicated expression, you're going to try to go, well, how do I get at that variable? Do I do a step into, oh, I stepped into the print line, oh, that's not what I wanted, right? Strange things start to happen if you've got this complicated thing across the page. Okay, so this is another one where programmers in the old days would avoid this because they would go, oh my God, you're using a new variable here, that's taking up precious resources, you know? In a 32K machine, yeah, that made a difference. On a 32 gigabyte machine, it makes no difference whatsoever. okay, with 128 register variables and all this fancy stuff that they have. Okay, so we're not worried about the performance of the thing, we're worried about being able to have human beings look at it easier, debug it easier, and so it's almost always easier to just plop the variable back, or plop the stuff back into a variable. The same thing goes for complicated expressions. I rarely make complicated expressions across the line. I'll take the pieces of the thing out that you would normally put in brackets if it's that complicated, and I'll put each piece out separately and give it a name so that you can see the result of the individual pieces before they get merged into something bigger. Okay, so it's a good debugging skill to just always use that variable. Okay. Anything we've missed in the donation box class? What's the other question that can be asked?
Who are we donating to?
Who are you donating to? Right? Which is really the question that people ask all the time. Hey, you know, what charity is this that I'm donating to? Should be the first question they ask before they turn around and put some money in. So notice that we don't have anything that does that, so we should write public string get charity name that sends back the charity name, just so that people can ask the question, tell me what I'm donating to, and then they'll throw some money in. Okay? What about set charity name?
When you create your class, you're already creating the name of the charity.
Well, we're creating the name of the charity. Do you want to change it?
Probably not.
Probably not. You don't want somebody coming up and taking SPCA and crossing it out and going, Daryl's charity, right? So chances are pretty good that this box is printed with the charity name on it, and it's going to remain that forevermore, and you're never going to change it. So there's an example of that control thing, right? By not writing that function, that method, I prevent people from changing the thing. So it's like, yeah, okay, I got it. Okay. What's the other thing that's going to probably happen with this box at some point in the day?
It's gonna be empty.
It's going to be emptied. So there's this sense that sooner or later, somebody's going to come along and empty out the box. So there's probably something that says public void clear, or whatever you want to call it, clean out, that resets money total to 0. And the presumption there is that they would have checked to see how much they was in so that they could get the total before they emptied it out. Okay, so that thing is still set that value to 0. And notice it doesn't, there's no reason to change the name. Okay, so it's really typical when you write, anytime you write one of these variables, you inside the class, you're always asking yourself the question, I have to write a get and a set. I have to write the matching things for this variable. I've got to be able to change it, and I've got to be able to get it back. I've got to be able to change it, got to be able to back, right? So there's probably going to be at least 2 of those functions for every variable that you write. Which, by the way, is why we're trying to minimize the number of variables that we store up here, because the more variables you put up there, the more things you have to have on the constructor, the more gets and sets you have to write, the more you have to remember to update it, okay? So you tend to minimize the number of variables that you store up there. Okay? What do you think about put money into? Can we come up with a better name for it?
Add money.
Add money. Since it's called a donation box,
Give money.
donate might not be a bad word. Okay? Here's another IDE thing. If you double click on that word and right mouse click and look through this horrid menu of things to this horridly named refactor. Refactor is I want to change this thing in some way, in some global way. There's this thing called refactor rename. And so if you decide I don't like put money into, you can just change it to donate there, hit the enter key, And if we go back and look in the donation driver, just do a save all, notice what happened. It changed all of them. Okay? This thing is very smart. If you do it the other way, if I change donate here, it will go back and change all of the occurrences in both that donation box and all the ones it finds in this file and all the ones it finds in any other files in your project. Okay? So refactor, rename is your friend. Okay? So that's why I say you can think of a horrid name to start with, and I always use the words that are in my head, even though it's a phrase, you know, because that seems to work, and then I'll go back and I'll go, okay, what I really meant was this, what I really meant was that, and I'll shorten it and I'll play with it until it works. The converse is also true. If you get a piece of code and somebody's given you this really strange name, and every time or it's your code, every time you're looking at the variable and you're going, what was that again? Oh yeah, that was whatever the words come in your head. Then go back and change the variable to whatever words you were using in your head. Because in general, the words that you're using in your head are almost always right. Okay? So at the very least, if you continue to use those words, even if they're phrases, you will write correct code. And a lot of bugs come in code from when people use the wrong variable for the wrong thing or can't remember what they mean anymore by some variable. Okay? So refactor, rename is definitely your friend. Change it. Same thing if you're changing the name of the donation box class. Remember we said that donation box, that name, the name of the class here, and the name of the file, and also the name of the constructor all have to agree. You can double click on donation box here and right mouse click, and there's a refactor rename there, and it'll change all of the things in all of the right places. Okay, so it's very smart. If you can find it, it does the right thing for you, saves you a lot of time. Very convenient little skill. Okay, let's just look at one more quick thing here. We've got this thing working, sort of working. How do you know that clear worked correctly? You could run the debugger and find out, or old school print statement. So do a clear, you know, like know how much money is in beforehand, do a clear, and then ask how much money is in again, and see, and then print it out, right? So look what happens to our printout. It gets longer and longer and longer, right? Now, this is the case where you don't want to use the debugger to test this thing, because if you use the debugger to test it, nobody knows what you tested. Okay? So the one place where the print statements actually come in handy is that if you write this driver program and you put in print statements to say, well, I'm doing this now, and it should be doing this, and this should be the value, and all of that sort of stuff, then people know what you have or you haven't tested. Okay? So the first shot at a driver program is really something that creates a test program. It's not doing anything useful other than just kicking the tires on probably every piece of code that you've got to ask the question, gee, did it actually get the charity name stored? Did the charity name come back okay? Is it increasing the donations properly? Okay. Want me to introduce a really easy bug? Here's a little testing thing. If we run this program, is it going to produce the correct answer for what we've got so far? Yes, because
100 is what we were putting on the other one.
we were too consistent. We always added 100. Okay, so there's another little trick of testing. You never add the same amount every time because you want to make sure that it's somehow changing and different from the last thing that you added. Okay? Now, so suppose we write this driver program so that we actually print out, oh, it should be 200, oh, it should be 300, oh, it should be 400, etc. Oh, it should be 450. Look what's happening to our driver program. It's getting longer and longer and longer with printouts. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're trying to get the damn thing to work. Every time you make a change, you gotta go look through the whole printout again to try to find out where's the spot where I was looking at, make sure all the other stuff is still right, that you haven't messed something up, right? So all of a sudden, every time you make a change, you're looking through this horrid amount of code. Is there anything that you can do to make that thing simpler?
I guess you can take the print statements that already tested.
How can you make the question is, how can you make the driver program work for you? Is there a sneaky change that we can do to this code instead of printing all the time? What's the opposite of printing all the time?
Once.
Don't print at all. So, for instance, what we could do here is we could say, we could put an if statement in here that says, if total is not equal to 500, and put every single print statement into an if statement. Total is whatever which should be 500. So we could do something like that. Advantage there is that if we wrap every single print statement inside an if statement, what gets printed out if everything's okay? Nothing. So the only thing that shows up is the errors. So now when you're running the main program at night and you're looking to see if there's anything wrong, if it prints out anything, there's something you need to go back and fix. If it prints out nothing, it's working so far.
But in this case, we would not print anything and there's an error on the elimination box, so you put 100.
It actually still works in this case. It's,
Exactly, so it won't
but-
print anything.
but what we need to do is we need to change some of this to get it to produce actually make an error. Okay, so yeah, the code's still broken. Okay, so there's a quick debugging skill. Instead of always printing out stuff, wrap the print statements in if statements, and you can go back and fix it later to be more complicated. Okay. Tomorrow, we're going to find out a better way of testing where we don't have to go so much work with the main program. So we're going to find a way to abandon the main program and have something that makes testing a lot easier for us so that we can make sure it works properly. Okay? See you tomorrow.